Alright guys, I'm Billy, this is the S2000, and welcome back to Built. Alright guys, so if you've been following along, then you know that this is my 2001 Honda S2000. Now, I originally bought it as a salvage title vehicle, and I went through the entire process to get it back to a rebuilt title so that I can title it and drive it here in Georgia. Now, if you want to take a moment and go ahead and catch up on some of those videos, I'll link them below in the description, but for the first time since I've gotten the car back on the road, I can officially say that it is broken. Alright guys, now look, I would be lying to you if I told you that it's really broken and it's going to take a ton of work to fix it, or that I didn't see this coming. Now, unfortunately, I did see it coming, and it is a relatively quick fix, but I have kind of been ignoring it a little bit when I mentioned how the car is running and driving. Now, since I've had it back on the road, I have had this one issue with the car, and it's super occasional. It doesn't happen all the time, but once in a while I would have either a little bit or even a moderate amount of loss of pressure in the clutch system. Now, usually all that took was a couple of quick pumps, adding some fluid, or maybe even a quick bleed, and everything was fine. So I always assumed that it was a very minor, very small leak, and that I would never really have a problem with it. Now, unfortunately, I was driving to work and I lost the clutch completely. So I was able to limp it back home. You'll notice I'm on the other side of the garage because that's what was open. That's where the S2000's been. I don't prefer to work over here, and I don't prefer to film over here, but that's where it is. It's not easy to move the car with no clutch hydraulics, so it kind of ended where it ended. And let's go ahead and jump into some of the components I bought and go ahead and get them swapped out and get this car back on the road. So to start off, I have the new OEM slave cylinder as well as an aftermarket stainless steel line, which will replace everything. We'll go ahead and start here since the master cylinder is still on order. Now, the first place to start is actually going to be by removing the slave cylinder as well as these hard lines and soft lines. Now, because of the type of stainless steel kit that I ordered, I can replace both the soft lines and the hard lines as well as this bracket. So let's go ahead and get that removed. Alright guys, so now let's take it back to the top side so we can focus on the master cylinder. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and get this hard line removed. You can see here on the side that there's a flare fitting, so let's go ahead and get that loosened up and removed. So it is a tight fit over here, but in hindsight I would say definitely still break the line loose while it's attached, but the two things I would say is to either drain the fluid as well as possibly loosen up the master cylinder to give yourself a little bit more clearance to remove the line completely. With the OEM hardline disconnected, I figured now would be a good time to go ahead and install the stainless steel line. Now, as you may have noticed, I did not remove the OEM hardlines. They're more interconnected and interwoven than I anticipated, and trying to find a good way to take them out led me to basically feel like it was a lot faster to just leave them in and tuck them out of the way. You'll actually notice that I go in here and I actually clip the hard lines to remove the old slave cylinder completely. Now, let's go ahead and get the new slave cylinder installed. Now, just for the sake of visibility and troubleshooting within this video, I actually removed the boot from the transmission, but you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that boot is installed before you install the slave cylinder, as there's no way to install it afterwards. Now it's time to go ahead and focus on removing the master cylinder, and the first step is to go ahead and remove the pin that connects the master cylinder to the pedal, which of course is held in by this clip on the left side of the pedal here. With the clip removed, we can go ahead and slide out the actual pin that holds the master cylinder piston to the pedal. And then once that's removed, we can go ahead and focus on the actual bolts that will hold in the master cylinder. At this point, removing the master cylinder is fairly simple. It's just two 12mm bolts on either side. It is a fairly tight space, so I did use a smaller 1/4-inch drive here, as well as a wobble extension that gave me a pretty good amount of clearance. Now, once these two bolts are uninstalled, you should be able to just pull the master cylinder out from the other side of the firewall. With the old master removed, we can go ahead and compare it to the new one. As you can see, everything looks the same. You can also see with the old one that it looks like the seal is actually what was leaking, so this is probably our issue. And let's go ahead and get the new one in. Now, installing the new master cylinder is relatively easy, starting with installing the new line. Now, I installed the line about 90% tight. I wanted to leave it a little bit loose in case I needed to manipulate it in order to fit it against the firewall. You may also notice that I removed the bracket that holds the throttle cable. Now, this is just a 10mm, so it's easy to take in and out, but ultimately it gave me enough room and clearance so that I could manipulate the master cylinder in against the firewall. Now, once the studs are through the firewall and you have the cylinder basically sitting flush against the firewall, it's time to move inside the car and finish the rest of the install. Now, like many other components, the installation of this master cylinder is really just the opposite of the uninstallation. So we're going to start with our two 12mm nuts that hold both the pedal assembly and the clutch master cylinder to the firewall. Once those are tight, we can go ahead and install our pin and clip, and then everything should be all set to go. Now, because this is a longer clip and a little bit of a tedious process when it comes to the pin and the clip, I'm going to go ahead and go over the rest of the install and any little things that I did to button up everything before I went on my test drive. Now, obviously you have to add fluid and do a bleed, which is a pretty straightforward process, especially if you know how to bleed brakes. It's the same process: pump your pedal, hold, crack the bleeder, let any air out. I was able to use my wife to operate the pedal while I operated the bleed valve, and this is pretty straightforward since you don't have 4 pistons or calipers. It's just the single slave cylinder to a single master cylinder. It's very straightforward and easy to do. If you want, I can make a video later. I'm sure this won't be the last clutch that I make or bleed, so if that needs to be seen, let me know. There is also one other thing that you would like to do. If once everything is bled and everything's ready to go, and this can even be post or during a test drive, you're going to want to go ahead and make adjustments to the pedal itself. Now, here on the end of the cylinder, you actually have this little fork that goes to the pedal, and you'll see that there's a 12mm nut here that can be used to adjust it. Now, adjusting this in or out can either increase or decrease the amount of pedal play you have, and it's always something you want to do before you go ahead and drive the car permanently.
Alright guys, well, we're back here in the garage after a successful test drive, so I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to wrap up this video. Now, I do think there's a little bit opportunity to do a little bit better adjustment of the clutch, and I'm going to continue to do that as I drive it, but ultimately it's so much better than it was, and I hopefully will not have any more issues with the pressure. So I also want to go ahead and take this time to thank anybody who watched this video this far, or really any of my videos for that matter. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below, either to videos before this or even my social media account if you want more day-to-day updates. I'm going to try to be better about posting pictures and comments and stuff like that. If there's anything in any of these videos where you feel like I kind of glossed over it, or you want to see more of, or even if you want to see less of, feel free to drop me a comment. I try to respond to everything within a day or two. So hopefully we'll hear from you there. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.